This is the multi-voice text-to-speech podfic reading of Poolside by Halictus, composed by Burning Aurora and Kaliana. Sunlight baked the concrete around him and bounced off of the clear blue pool. Remus sighed in contentment and flipped to the next page of his book. Lying on his stomach on one of the apartment's poolside deck chairs, he stretched his legs out behind him as much as he could, basking happily. In an effort to tan, he was wearing nothing but red swim shorts. They were just an inch or two shorter than average, but he constantly fidgeted with the ends, pulling them up, just slightly, to get more vitamin D on his thighs. Through his sunglass lenses, Remus noticed a new face, or rather body, at the pool. The man was tall and well-built, with deep brown skin. He held a bag in one hand as he walked out of the poolside locker room in flip-flops. His thighs were not pale, Remus observed. Plus, they were on full display. His skin tone was even and uninterrupted, aside from a rather snug blue Speedo. Remus swallowed. With effort, he tore his eyes away and tried to focus back on his book. Remus heard flip-flops behind him, and then a chair's scrape as someone sat near him. After a few moments of feigning to read, he actually did get drawn back into his book. It must have been about 10 minutes later when he heard the voice.
Excuse me.
Remus turned to see the man from earlier looking at him in concern. He had removed his sunglasses, and his full eyebrows were drawn together. He was gorgeous, Remus decided. Remembering he had been asked a question, he finally answered.
Yes.
Do you know him?
The man pointed behind Remus. Turning, Remus saw another man standing a little ways behind his chair, fully clothed, holding a towel in one hand and a cell phone in the other.
No.
Remus answered. The gorgeous man nodded, then stood in one fluid motion and, to Remus's surprise, ripped the phone out of the stranger's grasp with one hand and swung a clean punch into the stranger's jaw with the other. The stranger went down, and Mr. Speedo tapped on the phone for a few moments before tossing it down to him. The man tried to catch it, but it hit the concrete with a crack. Remus's eyebrows felt stuck in place against his forehead. Blue Speedo sat down casually, as if nothing unusual had just occurred.
You have to pay for this!
The stranger sputtered from the ground.
No, I do not.
The gorgeous man pushed his mussed hair out of his face. A few curls had fallen from his punch.
And I'm a lawyer. I can press charges against you for voyeurism offenses. Upskirting is illegal in this country.
Remus frowned, trying to add everything together. Was the other man taking photographs of him?
You don't.
Want to get punched again? Get lost, man.
The stranger scrambled away, and Remus turned to face his apparent defendant.
You okay?
The man asked. His voice was noticeably softer now, and Remus masked his pleasant surprise. Remus laughed.
Is your fist okay?
The man grinned. It was slightly crooked and entirely endearing.
Yeah.
He opened and closed his hand, then showed Remus his unmarred fist. Remus could have sworn he saw the knuckles bloodied previously, but he must have imagined it.
I deleted the photos he took.
Thank you.
Remus said.
I didn't even notice it happening. I guess I was just oblivious.
His savior smiled.
The perils of a good book. I'm serious.
Remus.
Pleasure.
Remus nodded and turned slowly back to his book. He didn't think he'd be able to concentrate on the words now, but didn't know how to continue the conversation.
What are you reading?
Sirius asked.
Jane Eyre.
I've never read her work.
Sirius exclaimed.
Is she a modern author?
Oh,
Remus paused.
No, the title is Jane Eyre. The author is Charlotte Bronte. You like to read?
Sirius smiled.
I do. Mostly history, though.
Remus nodded, then thought of a suitable topic.
Which apartment number are you?
To his surprise, Remus watched Sirius's brown skin flush pink.
I don't actually, live in the complex. I'm just here for the pool.
So my savior snuck into my apartment complex's pool.
Remus teased.
What are the odds you're not a lawyer either?
Sirius's blush didn't improve, although his eyes brightened at Remus's joke.
Does it count if my parents are?
Remus laughed and shook his head. The two of them chatted a bit longer, then Remus returned to his book. He still wasn't sure if Sirius was interested in him beyond just friendship, but he secretly preened when Sirius scooted his chair closer after returning from a dip in the pool. Later, after Remus swam as well, he was ready to finally leave the sun.
Any chance you're also using the locker room of the apartment you don't live in?
Remus decided not to explain that he already noticed Sirius arriving from the lockers.
Maybe.
Sirius answered with a bashful smile. He stood up in front of Remus and stretched his strong back, producing an almost obscene groan. Remus flushed.
Maybe I'll see you in there. I have to take one last swim first.
Sounds good.
Sirius grabbed his bag and made his way to the locker room, leaving Remus behind. It was empty, just like when he arrived. Sirius suddenly appreciated James canceling on their plans to sneak into this pool together, since he ended up meeting Remus. Sirius had noticed him from across the pool when he arrived, but he hadn't noticed how good-looking he was until he was walking past him. The sight of him on his stomach with his shorts bunched up made Sirius suddenly need to sit down, lest he risk making a scene. There was only so much a Speedo could hide, after all. Now, in the locker room, Sirius prepared to leave Remus. He wasn't sure if the other man was even interested in him. Nonetheless, he slowed his movements ever so slightly, buying time. He set his bag on a wooden bench by the lockers and walked back to the open showers. He selected one on the left side of the room and walked under the spray. Sirius stepped out of his Speedo and placed it on the hook next to him. He had just begun to rinse the shampoo from his hair when he heard the door open and close. When he finally opened his eyes again, Remus was there, standing under the shower right next to his, despite the other dozen being free as well. Sirius noticed Remus's red shorts on the hook next to his own swimsuit, and he promptly tilted his chin up, determined to not look down.
How was the swim?
Sirius asked mildly.
Good. I'm feeling pretty tired now, though.
Remus yawned as if on cue.
The sun does that. Saps your energy, like, travel.
Yeah, definitely.
Sirius attempted to keep his cool and decided to stop speaking. It was making it very hard for him to ignore the fact that he was naked and standing next to Remus, who was also naked. Presumably, he wasn't going to risk looking to confirm. The sight of those red shorts on the hook were already circulating his blood less than ideally. In fact, he should probably just leave now before Remus knew more about him.
So, Sirius,
Remus said.
I don't know anything about you. What do you do?
Sirius could have sworn he saw Remus's eyes dart down at the end of his question.
I'm in the field of, the medical field.
He hoped he got the pronunciation right. Remus scoffed.
We wouldn't get along then.
Why not?
Sirius regretted the eagerness in his voice as soon as Remus's eyebrows quirked, acknowledging it.
Doctors and I often disagree,
He pressed the soap dispenser a bit harder than necessary.
usually over the existence of my symptoms.
Sirius was surprised to note Remus's playful tone. Despite clearly being frustrated over it, he was still able to make fun.
Well, then you should know I'm not technically a doctor.
What are you?
Can't say. It's a secret.
Remus grinned.
Oh yeah, what color are your scrubs?
Lime green.
Bullshit.
They both laughed. When Remus's eyes crinkled this time, Sirius watched them flick down again, and he himself couldn't resist a quick glance. Confirming that yes, Remus was indeed naked, Sirius had to turn off his shower and make towel grabbing his #1 priority. Remus joined him in front of the lockers a moment later. He was still dripping, and he turned the dial of his locker almost lazily, as if he knew how much he was distracting Sirius. Adjacent with his non-lockered belongings, Sirius dried off and studied the ceiling.
So, Sirius,
Remus repeated.
what are the odds I'm misreading the signs here?
Sirius swallowed.
The signs.
Remus took a half step closer. Apparently he had abandoned the task of opening his locker.
The signs.
He confirmed.
Remus.
Sirius muttered. He looked from Remus's eyes down to his lips. The poolside door opened and shut with a bang. Sirius turned quickly away from Remus and wrapped his towel around him. He suddenly needed to sit down. Again, dully, he heard whoever else had entered the locker room start a sink faucet. Remus, the fox, gave a quick laugh and stepped away from Sirius completely.
Think I forgot my swimsuit in there. Be right back.
Sirius, amused and dumbstruck, just shook his head. What a day this had been. Remus grabbed his swim shorts from the hook he had left them on, gave them a quick dry in the machine, and returned to Sirius. Or he corrected, to the lockers. He was pretty sure it was the same thing, though. What a day this had already been.
So, Sirius,
He said upon returning.
Yes.
The other man was mostly dressed by now, and his hair looked completely dry, despite being soaked just seconds earlier. Odd. Remus inwardly smiled at Sirius's minor blush upon his reappearance, though.
I'm hungry. You don't live here, and I think we just got interrupted. There's only one solution.
Sirius started. Remus was starting to love the effect he had on Sirius, a little too quickly, he noted.
We just got interrupted.
Sirius repeated, lowering his voice slightly.
Yeah.
Remus said, extra breathily.
You were about to tell me what kind of not doctor you are.
Sirius laughed.
Oh, fuck off.
He pointed a finger at Remus's chest and kept his head tilted slightly up. Remus somehow found it oddly endearing, the way Sirius tried to not glance down his body.
You know what you're doing.
Sirius accused. Remus made quick work of his locker and retrieved his clothes.
Anyway, here's the most important question.
Most important question.
It'll determine whether or not I invite you up to my apartment for delivery.
Remus explained.
Ah,
Sirius nodded.
now I understand the gravity of the situation.
Pineapple?
Remus paused a bit, holding up his underwear to give weight to the option.
Or no pineapple?
He pulled them on. Sirius blinked.
On pizza?
Remus clarified. Maybe they weren't on the same page for humor after all, he realized.
Oh.
Sirius said.
Well, I have heard that eating pineapple makes something else taste better.
He raised his eyebrows in jest. No, Remus realized, laughing. They were, in fact, definitely on the same page for humor.
A wonderful argument. I'll have to remember that for the future.
Why just remember it when you could also test it?
God.
Remus pulled on the last of his clothes and swung his locker shut.
Okay. I barely know you, but if you pay for the pizza, I'll invite you into my apartment.
Barely know me.
Sirius asked, incredulous.
Remus, you already know my deepest workplace-induced fashion flaw.
Remus laughed again.
Lime green. You're so full of shit. Come on, it's this way.
They walked through the corridors and up the stairs to Remus's floor, then down the hall to his door. The complex was large enough to support Sirius's sneaking into the pool unnoticed. Remus wondered if anyone else did the same. He unlocked his door and motioned Sirius through. Remus followed and shut the door behind him. He half expected Sirius to act on their final solitude, maybe kiss him against the door, but instead found him turning about the space.
I like it,
He declared.
Thanks.
Remus said. He was very much not being kissed against the door, but he tried to not let it frustrate him. Maybe Sirius was into taking things slow.
Have you been in this apartment very... wow. Look at this beautiful cat. Remus, can you please introduce us?
Remus, still very much not being kissed against the door, but suddenly very much amused by Sirius and his behavior, even if it meant not kissing him against the door, moved to pick up his cat and present her to Sirius.
This
He said.
is Lady Catherine de Bourgh. I usually just call her Bug.
Sirius presented his hand solemnly.
Your ladyship, the pleasure of this meeting is all mine.
Careful.
Remus said.
She mistrusts people at first. She gets along with other animals better.
He prepared to pull the cat back when she took her, inevitable, swipe at Sirius. To his surprise, Bug purred loudly and let Sirius stroke her fur.
Gets along with other animals, huh? Are you calling me a dog, Remus?
Shut up.
Remus shook his head fondly.
You can have her then.
He handed the cat to Sirius and moved to sit down on the couch. The back of his thighs protested, but he kept it to himself. He had been doing so well with the morning stretches that the near constant pain was somehow unexpected. Mildly confused, he shrugged it off. Instead, he watched as Sirius played with his typically unfriendly cat. Comfortable, if not basic, conversation flowed between them until the pizza arrived. Sirius paid at the door, and Remus filled water glasses. Remus was still very much interested in Sirius, and their continued abstinence was becoming annoying. Nonetheless, they ate their pizza in chastity.
So, Sirius,
Remus set his plate down on the coffee table.
are you single?
Remus,
Sirius gasped.
how could you say that? The love of my life is literally in earshot. She's
He leaned down to get a closer look.
currently chewing on a stuffed mouse.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm single. Are you single?
I am.
Remus stood from the couch and moved to stand in front of Sirius's chair.
And I am also very much attracted to the hot man from earlier, who wore a blue Speedo to the pool.
Sirius's eyes darkened, and he stood up as well. Their bodies were now centimeters apart.
Is that so?
Mm-hmm.
Sirius brought one hand up, hovering, but not yet touching, the back of Remus's hair.
I'm very attracted to the hot man from earlier who wore those red shorts and seemed determined to distract me when he wasn't wearing them.
Yeah,
Remus asked.
good.
He kissed Sirius. They moved against each other in synchrony.
God,
Remus muttered against Sirius's lips.
that blue fucking Speedo.
Would you have preferred lime green?
Oh, fuck me.
That can be arranged.
Sirius smirked before hoisting Remus up into his arms and walking towards the bedroom. Remus shut the bedroom door behind him to keep Bug out. This time, to his satisfaction, he was kissed against the newly shut door. Eventually, Sirius deposited him on the bed, and they began to pull off each other's clothes. Remus pulled away to lean towards the nightstand.
I have everything in the top drawer. It's...
Remus Merlin.
Sirius interrupted.
What?
Remus wasn't sure he heard the second word right.
Your thighs.
Sirius stressed.
Oh, yeah.
Remus smirked back at him.
They're so fucking sunburnt.
Sirius announced.
Oh, no.
We are not having sex.
Sirius said.
Oh, no.
Remus repeated.
My mouth isn't sunburnt.
Here, just lay down.
Sirius said, ignoring him.
I'll put something on your thighs to help the burn.
Remus groaned and face planted against the bed.
I may have aloe in the bathroom.
He spoke into the covers.
I have some medicine already with me. Sort of doctor's duty and all.
Fine.
Such a good patient you are.
Such a good bedside manner you have. You just had to diagnose me with sunburn.
Your skin will literally peel off.
Sirius said.
Just let me take care of this first, and we can see about the mouth thing after.
Oh, thank God.
Remus said.
Go right ahead, Doctor Not a Doctor.
Sirius laughed. Remus felt Sirius rub some sort of lotion into his skin, without getting up first. He must have had his bag nearby already, Remus reasoned. Then he stopped reasoning because he could feel his skin begin to heal. He hadn't even realized it hurt until now, and he had to laugh in astonishment. Whatever Sirius had with him was perfect. Remus hoped he wasn't expecting payment, or at least not in the form of money.
Better.
Sirius asked, sliding his hands down Remus's legs, gently caressing his calves.
Yeah, that felt like magic.
I get that a lot.
Cocky.
Yeah,
You are. You should prove it too.
I should prove it. That I'm cocky.
Yeah.
Remus said.
That doesn't even make sense.
Sirius laughed. Remus sat up and turned to face Sirius. He motioned for Sirius to stand, and he did. Remus gently dragged his fingernails down Sirius's torso.
Is this okay, Doctor?
Sirius grinned as his breath hitched.
Don't call me that. And yes, very much so.
Remus hooked a pinky finger into the waistband of the boxers he watched Sirius pull on only an hour ago.
What's the diagnosis then? My mouth is sunburn-free.
Remus pressed his teeth against Sirius's stomach, then moved lower, hovering above the only clothed part of his body.
Bloody fucking hell.
Remus took his finger out of Sirius's waistband and pulled back. Sirius took a labored breath.
Merlin, you are a bloody tease.
Remus laughed at the unfamiliar first term.
Just say the word then.
Remus, by all means, put me out of my misery. I've been pent up ever since I saw you at the pool.
In response, Remus yanked down Sirius's boxers and looked at him unabashed. Maintaining eye contact, Remus licked a slow stripe up against his length, then stopped at the head.
Fucking hell.
Sirius moaned.
You're so bloody gorgeous like this, you know that.
He took a deep breath.
Merlin, I love your confidence. You're the cocky one here, you know.
Remus cut him off by swallowing him down in one go. After they both got each other off, they curled up together on the bed.
I don't usually do this.
Sirius said. He wasn't talking about the sex.
You can if you want to.
Remus replied.
I'm free.
Sirius laughed.
Such a fox.
Remus smiled and kissed his nose. Sirius pulled him close to his chest.
Remus,
Yeah.
have you ever thought about
He searched for words.
other worlds?
Remus scrunched his nose and Sirius found it adorable.
Like alternate universes.
Sirius tilted his head, made difficult by the comfortable pillow he was sharing with Remus.
More like hidden worlds, within our own. Like, if there was one, would you want to be in it? Or know about it?
Remus drew idle shapes on Sirius's bare side.
I suppose. To be honest, I don't know if it would matter. Whatever world I'm in, I would just want to be happy, and with the things that I love.
Sirius thought about this response.
Things like,
Bug, good food, friends. Although I haven't got much of those now, to be honest. You know I'm single. I like the idea of a long-term partner.
yeah,
Sirius responded.
I like the idea of that too.
Still curled together and eventually joined by Bug, the two men fell asleep warm, sated, and cautiously optimistic. Remus woke in the morning after the best night of sleep he could remember having. He rolled over, free of pain, and reached down to feel his thighs. His sunburn was totally gone. Yawning, he turned to see Sirius pulling on, incredibly, lime green scrubs.
What?
Remus,
Sirius said.
I'll be back at the pool tonight, and I'm a wizard healer, not a doctor.
Sirius kissed Remus's forehead gently.
That's not a thing.
Remus reasoned sleepily before Sirius disappeared with a pop. Finite. Thanks for listening to this text-to-speech podfic composed by Burning Aurora and Caliana.